fishmongers.
She's one of the wittiest women in the world.
Want me to tell you how I got on the show?
She has got the bawdiest, raunchiest sense of humor.
Is there anything in show business you haven't done and you've always wanted to do? Robert Redford.
My jaw dropped every day I worked with her.
She is a very sensitive, intelligent, and fun-loving human being.
Well, when something's this fun, why do you stop? As long as they keep asking, I'll keep saying yes.
Who can come up with a cutting remark.
That is show business.
She has just reinvented what it is to age with grace and humor and beauty.
She looks incredible. Look at this sexy body.
Sex is my middle name.
Could you do me a favor?
Well, maybe on my lunch hour.
In a town where comedy rules, Betty White wears the golden crown.
She is the pro's pro.
She is the Chevy truck of show business. She's just solid.
Whether you remember her best as Sue Ann Nivens, Rose Nyland, or the host of Saturday Night Live, this unflappable queen of comedy has been making us laugh for over 6 decades.
She means different things to different people of different generations.
I have finally met my mentor. I've been looking for her my whole life.
Oh, amazing. So fantastic. And I love me some Betty White.
And the living legend is still going strong.
She loves to work, and I think that's what's kept her so young.
If it weren't fun, I would have retired a long time ago.
Born in Oak Park, Illinois in 1922, she was christened Betty, not Elizabeth, because her parents didn't want their choice of a name shortened.
I was the happiest only child that ever walked the face of the earth. Everybody says, oh, poor lonely only, you know. Anything but.
Betty's father, Horace, was an electrical engineer. Her mother, Tess, was a homemaker. When Betty was 2, the Whites moved to Los Angeles. With its beaches and mountains, plus the excitement of Hollywood, LA was the perfect spot for such an active family.
Horace White and his wife Tess instilled in their daughter a love of games and a great sense of humor.
I've always had, not a raunchy sense of humor, but those stories that my father would bring home from the office and say, don't take that one to school. So sometimes you see double entendre. Well, nowadays, that sounds silly to even talk about. There's no such thing as double entendre. It's single entendre, and there it is. But in those days, I always found great fun in what wasn't said.
Horace and Tess, I think, also instilled in their daughter a deep and abiding love for animals.
When the Great Depression arrived, the Whites had to watch every penny. But Betty's father always found a way for the family to have pets.
He would make radios. And so my father, being a good businessman, he would trade the radio for a dog. We wound up with 26 dogs. Now, the radios didn't eat, but the dogs did. It wasn't one of his best business ventures.
From an early age, Betty learned the value of a solid work ethic, a virtue she would keep for the rest of her life.
The one really dirty word in our house was bored. If anybody ever said bored, they would catch it, because there were too many things that you'll never get time to do.
All through her school years, Betty took an active interest and was active in music and drama. And it was very clear by graduation that she had set her sights on a show business career.
In 1939, just 1 month after graduation, Betty took part in her first TV broadcast, an experimental transmission from the Packard Building in downtown LA.
It was broadcast clear down to the first floor, from the 6th floor to the first floor, and the audience had to stand around among all the cars on the showroom floor, the Packards, and watch this little monitor to see what was happening. Had to wear brown lipstick, brown eye makeup, lots of heavy, heavy pancake, and it was so hot because all the lights were so fiendishly hot.
The experience was so exhilarating, Betty decided to skip college and focus on acting. But Betty's ambitions were put on hold with America's entry into World War II.
Betty wound up volunteering as a part of the American Women's Volunteer Services, where she drove a truck and delivered goods to military stations all around LA.
Oh, I was so proud of my uniform. And the guys had little insignia and stuff, and they would give you insignia. Well, pretty soon you'd put them on your hat and your bag. Pretty soon you couldn't lift the bag because it was so full of insignia, but you wouldn't ever think of not putting them on.
The popular Betty also caught the eye of a handsome P-38 pilot named Dick Barker. The two married, but their impetuous relationship went into a tailspin as soon as the war ended. The marriage lasted just 6 months. As post-war America returned to normal, Betty resumed her dreams of acting, performing in plays at the Bliss Hayden Little Theater in Beverly Hills. One night after a show, the 24-year-old was introduced to a charismatic young agent named Lane Allen. His interest was more than just professional.
Well, the next night he was there in the first row, and the next night he was there in the first row, and by the third night I said, yes, I'd like to have dinner.
The two fell in love, although Betty stayed focused on her career, finding work as a radio actress. But Lane was persistent, and after 2 years of dating, Betty agreed to become Mrs. Lane Allen. In the late 1940s, fewer than 1,000 homes in Los Angeles had a television set. But that number was rising quickly, and in 1949, Betty made her first professional TV appearance.
It was a special hosted by the popular personality Dick Haynes.
He said, can you sing? I said, yeah. You know, can you sing? Can you stand on your head and juggle? Sure, whatever.
But I think it was all a learning curve for her to learn what TV was. But the fact is, I think that she always was at home on TV, in front of the TV cameras. And so in those regards, that she was there for the early days of TV, and that she learned her trade so when the right opportunities came along, she was able to, really roll with it.
Betty's talent prompted hot disc jockey Al Jarvis to recruit her for his new daytime TV show, Hollywood on Television.
And all of a sudden he said, yes, we'll be on for 5.5 hours. I thought panic began.
It was on 5 days a week, 5 hours a day, live. It was an unscripted variety show that almost immediately made Betty a familiar face to Los Angeles viewers.
Her on-camera rapport with Al Jarvis was so successful, Betty's salary jumped from $50 to $300 a week. But the daily demands proved too much for her marriage to Lane Allen.
He was a fine man. He just married the wrong lady because I was career-oriented, let's face it, and I'm not a very good housewife.
White had seen the breakup of 2 marriages by age 28, but her career continued to take off. By 1951, television in Los Angeles had grown from 3 stations to 7. Hollywood on Television added a primetime Saturday night show, and one recurring skit about a scatterbrained couple named Alvin and Elizabeth gave Betty her next breakthrough.
Situation comedy was on the rise. So in 1952, the characters were spun off into their own weekly half-hour, Life with Elizabeth.
Is it a mountain lion, dear?
No. A spider.
Is she kidding? No, she's not kidding. When it comes to spiders, she's a real nudnik.
Well, do something to shoot it a little bit.
There! He's finished. Now, go on and go to bed.
No, I will not.
Well, what's so terrible about spiders? Tell him, honey.
They go doing.
Life with Elizabeth aired live each Saturday night, and its hardworking star continued to do Hollywood on Television 6 days a week, live.
I don't know what we were thinking.
Aren't we a couple of dopes?
By age 30, Betty White had earned her stripes as one of early television's most seasoned veterans. In 1953, she received her first Emmy Award for Life with Elizabeth. No one was more surprised than she was, except Zsa Zsa Gabor.
Zsa Zsa Gabor was doing a show called Bachelor's Haven, and everybody was sure that she was going to get the Emmy, so you didn't even really think of it. And when they got up to where they were starting to introduce the award, Zsa Zsa got her purse and her compact out, and she was getting all. She thought she was going to get it. I mean, it was that much of a shoe-in. Well, when they called my name, I just could not believe it.
That same year, the star was thrilled when Life with Elizabeth began airing not just in Los Angeles, but across America. Ready or not, Betty White was about to enter the big time.
Marianne, it's Betty White. I burnt the onion soup again. Oh, what do you do? Kill the smell and start over. Here are some things I know new brides need, especially Florient air freshener. Florient does kill stubborn odors fast. Gives long-lasting protection, too.
By the mid-1950s, Betty White had become one of television's most familiar faces. In 1954, the 32-year-old was offered her own daytime celebrity guest show on NBC, provided she could juggle 2 series at once. For Betty, that was business as usual.
They said, now, you know, it's an hour a day. Do you think, can you handle that? I thought, an hour a day, what am I going to do with the rest of all that time?
But the reality of making the Betty White show wasn't so easy.
There was a problem with stations in the Deep South. Affiliates noticed that there was a black musician on the show, and they threatened to drop the show unless he was fired. Betty refused to do so, and the affiliates backed down, continuing to air the show.
After a year, the Betty White show was canceled, making its final broadcast on New Year's Eve 1954.
But there was no time for grieving for the Betty White show. The very next morning, she was up early and hosting the Tournament of Roses parade in Pasadena.
You know, I'm not a party girl. I got you out of all the New Year's Eve parties because they'd pick you up at 4 o'clock in the morning and take you over there, and it was a lovely experience.
You have a date with the angel.
In 1957, Betty White returned to network television, co-starring with Bill Williams in the situation comedy Date with the Angels.
I like a dog with a green face, don't you?
I can ring that bell all night. You know, I bet that mallet weighs 40 pounds.
It's a good thing he doesn't get many like you. You'd have him out of business in no time.
All done with muscle tone right here now. Oh, there's Jim.
Hear what he said? Muscle tone. That's what it takes. Condition.
Any condition.
Huh?
That's all right, honey. You go right on working out.
Betty also served as one of the show's producers.
At that point, nobody thought about, oh, here's Betty, what is she doing producing? And it was after that, in retrospect, people asked, well, what were the difficulties? You didn't think of them in those terms.
Despite good reviews, ABC had little faith in the series, and by 1958, Betty was once again out of a job and looking for work. The next month, the 36-year-old actress visited New York, where she appeared as a guest panelist on What's My Line. She also made her debut on The Tonight Show with Jack Parr.
Jack was always trying to set me up and fix me up with somebody. So as a gag one night, he had been talking about his producer's brother, this big war hero. He had Phil on the show at the same time I was on.
Colonel Phil Cochran was a decorated fighter pilot who was just as charming as Parr had promised. For the next few years, Betty would see Phil whenever she flew into New York to make a Tonight Show appearance or guest on a game show. By now, game shows were a mainstay for Betty, whose enthusiasm and skill as a player made her a huge hit.
She's a serious game player. I'm a serious game player too, so I appreciate that in other people.
Oh, I just love to play games. We used to play them around the breakfast table at home, my mom and dad and I. And so when I started working on game shows, Dad said, come, when I think of all the years that you gave it away and now you're selling, playing games, game shows came into their own.
Through the game shows and all of that, you got a sense that you liked Betty White, that she was a really good person.
That's the one. It's Betty White.
And smart.
And it's called emergence. It's the soul of man struggling up out of his captivity and not quite making it.
I mean, she played some pretty difficult games on TV. These weren't, you know, she would play some real brain teasers. And there was a sense that she was a game person, that she was game for anything.
It's a dog trotter is what it is, and you just prod the other dog away. Doesn't hurt him at all, but it gives him such a shock. The upholsterers use this to put those little studs, those little nails, you know,
I know that upholsterer. I know that upholsterer.
It's a portable garbage disposal. If you don't want to keep all your garbage at home, you can travel with it. And it really is great.
It was on a game show that Betty met the man who would change her life. Best known as MC of the GE College Bowl, Alan Ludden seemed more like a professor than a game show personality and actor. But hosting Password brought out Ludden's charm and sense of humor.
I was a huge fan of Alan's. I used to go do Password all the time with him, and he was just such a twinkly-eyed, darling thing.
I was delighted to do Password. It was such a good game. And he had been watching me on the Situation Comedy, so we enjoyed seeing each other. That was great.
Betty had no idea that Ludden's life was in turmoil. At the time of her first appearance on Password, Alan's wife of 18 years was dying of cancer. Betty didn't find out that Ludden had become a widower until the following year when the two co-starred in a play in Cape Cod.
He said something. I said, well, your wife hears that one. You know, just in a silly expression. And I could have bitten my tongue. He said, my wife has been dead for a year. And it was a wonderful marriage, and they loved each other so dearly, and he was still hurting from it.
The play Critics' Choice began a new chapter for Alan and Betty, but only her boyfriend, Colonel Phil Cochran, could see where things were going.
He said, you like him too much. I said, no, don't be silly. Well, he came to the show one night to see us in Critics' Choice, and there's a very romantic last scene. Alan kisses me on stage. Phil was in the third row, and that devil Alan held that kiss. I mean, he held that kiss till from the third row you heard,
Eventually, Betty had to face her feelings for Alan, who shared with her not only show business, but a love of family, animals, and of course, games.
I never dated them at the same time. I'm not smart enough to be able to work that out. But finally, Phil and I had a talk, and I said, you were right.
Ludden's closest friends, which included TV star Mary Tyler Moore and her husband Grant Tinker, approved of the match the moment they met Betty.
We all had dinner together, and there was no question about it. From the second or third sentence in, we knew she was a wonderful human being, and that if she wasn't great for Alan, then there was something wrong with Alan.
Betty and Alan married in 1963, beginning one of Hollywood's most famous marriages.
They were probably as close as any married couple I've ever observed. They were giddy about each other.
Throughout the 1960s, Betty reveled in her roles as wife, stepmom to Alan's 3 children, game show guest, and co-host of the Tournament of Roses parade.
And our guest member at this meeting is my good friend Rod Serling and his setter Mike. Mike is the one with the red hair.
In 1971, the 49-year-old created, wrote, and hosted The Pet Set, a show featuring celebrities and their pets.
Well, I'd like to meet my special guests, Mr. and Mrs. James Stewart.
She's someone who clearly cares for pets, for animals.
Yeah, we got it. Yes. Oh, what's the matter?
And she took that part of her persona, turned it into a TV show.
You know, I found out an elephant likes to have her trunk blown into. That's kind of a love thing. Blow in her trunk and she'll follow you anywhere, you know. And working with animals is startlingly like working with people. They make me laugh, cry, and sigh and worry, but it's endlessly fascinating.
But to Betty's disappointment, the syndicated series aired for just 39 episodes. As for what would come next, Betty had no idea. Almost 15 years had passed since her last primetime TV series. With the cancellation of her latest show, Betty White faced an uncertain future. In 1973, as the hit sitcom The Mary Tyler Moore Show entered its 4th season, its makers were on the lookout for a guest star who could mix apple pie sunniness with sharp-toothed venom. It was a part tailor-made for Betty White, who was cast as Sue Ann Nivens, the host of a cooking show at Mary's fictional TV station.
She was the first Martha Stewart, except didn't get herself in trouble. But
Sue Ann Nivens would have the wit and innocence that Betty White can combine.
Are you busy? No, I was just fixing myself something to eat.
Oh, that's what I smelled out in the hall. I was afraid someone's cat had died.
that she would have a wicked mouth, like Betty White.
And now, dear, you really should get some sleep. You look dreadful.
She would be a really good-looking, gorgeous woman, like Betty White.
Now, be honest, does it make me look a little easy, a little cheap?
Well, a little, yes.
Oh, good.
Originally, Sue Ann was to only make a single appearance as the adulterous other woman who seduces the husband of Phyllis, played by Cloris Leachman.
That must be Lars. Lars? My Lars? Dr. Lindstrom? He offered to take me home. Wasn't that nice of him?
Betty's first episode is a real tribute to her magnetism and her ability to win an audience over.
Do try a little iodine for that scratch on the desk. And baking soda will bring that grease up out of the carpet like nothing. Oh, dear, don't throw away those coffee grounds. They're the perfect plant food for Mary's geraniums. Now, if you want to tidy up in a hurry, think of your living room as a big clock. Start at midnight and then go around the room working clockwise toward the kitchen. You'll be done in 2 shakes of a lamb's tail. Thank you.
Here was a character who came on a show of established people and stole the heart of the husband of one of those established people.
I'll come right to the point. I'm here to talk about you, and Mary's here to see to it that I don't rip your face off.
It stood to reason that they would not like to see Betty White again, having broken Cloris's heart.
But Betty knew just how to play the role. Sue Ann was too funny to be disliked by Mary or anyone else.
Oh, my poor baby. Well, there was no need for violence. But why in the West, sitting and talking is one thing, but why you should deliberately destroy an innocent souffle that never did you any harm. One moment of harm, that's beyond me. I think you've gone too far.
Audiences ate it up, and Sue Ann Nivens became a recurring character.
Good morning, newsmongers.
Hello. Bringing her in to play Sue Ann gave a whole new dynamic to the WJM newsroom. And not just the newsroom. I mean, she was so successful playing that character, she became an integral part of the entire show.
God, it was just such a wonderful shot in the arm to bring that character in with all these guys. And she as a person is just so easy to work with and so funny.
Betty White is one of the favorites of the male crew because she's one of the wittiest women in the world, and she can take a line and just turn it around and just break you up.
Being fired is like being violated.
Leave it to Murray to find a bright spot.
And the guys just love her.
Lou, you know what that is?
Mistletoe.
Actually, it's asparagus fern, but what the hell?
If there was one thing that rivaled Sue Ann's obsession with newsman Lou Grant, played by Ed Asner, it was her antipathy for Gavin MacLeod's character, Murray Slaughter.
Murray, with your sly wit, it's a wonder you never became more successful.
She loved to cut Murray Slaughter off at the ankles because he was always criticizing her for her aggressiveness with men, and so she would go and attack his baldness.
There's this elderly gentleman who's taking a cruise to the Mediterranean, and I'll be traveling with him as sort of a practical nurse.
Well, that ought to be a nice change for you, Sue Ann. Cruising at sea.
Oh, I can't tell you how sad I am that we're parting. We'll miss the chance to grow old together. I'll never see your scalp turn to silver.
In one episode, Murray was forced to work as Sue Ann's assistant.
Hold out your arms.
Oh, no. Oh, no, I'm not going to put that up, Sue Ann. What do you think I am?
There we are, you know. It's only going to take 2 seconds, dear.
She just emasculated me as much as she could, and the only way I could get back was there was a big cake, and I took one, I sat around this cake.
Let's sit down.
She rode that cake down to the floor like one of these cowboys does a Brahma bull. You know, she just stayed right with it, and it was hysterical. And I really think we never could rehearse it because we did only one cake.
Have you ever been sat in a many-tiered cake and you just keep sinking down and all this frosting?
Could use a little more vanilla.
My dogs followed me around for a week. No matter how many showers I took, they said, "Ooh, Mommy smells so sweet."
More than 2 decades had passed since Betty's first Emmy Award for Life with Elizabeth. In her first season as Sue Ann, Betty received another Emmy, this time as Best Supporting Actress in a Comedy Series.
And this lady, I'm going to take home and introduce her to a 23-year-old cousin. Thank you very, very much.
The next year, she won yet again. Making the victory even sweeter was the Emmy won by her husband, Alan Ludden, as the host of Password. By 1977, The Mary Tyler Moore Show had become an American institution, its popularity growing every year. But after 7 seasons, Moore decided the show should end while it was still on top.
I treasure you people.
During the taping of the final episode, emotions ran high. It didn't take acting to produce sadness on the set.
We were in the newsroom for the last time, and we were all huddled together. Well, Betty was right here, right next to me. We were really very unhappy, all of us, because we didn't want this thing to end.
Thank you for being my family.
Here I am holding Betty White, who at that moment I don't think was Sue Ann Nivens. I think at that moment none of us were the characters we played.
Life after The Mary Tyler Moore Show meant spin-offs for many of its characters, including Rhoda and Phyllis. Ted Knight played a new role in the hit sitcom Too Close for Comfort, while Gavin MacLeod shipped off as Captain Steubing on The Love Boat. 55-year-old Betty White also embarked on her own series, but deciding what The Betty White Show should be wasn't easy. Sue Ann had been Betty's greatest role, but it was a character best left in moderation.
They thought Sue Ann on her own show would be a little tough to take. That's a lot of, you can get, your teeth can fall out. So they thought, let's go into another story. And Angie Dickinson's Policewoman was very popular at that time, so they did my character as an actress on a cop show like that. Well, nobody knew who this lady was. They were expecting Sue Ann, and they came into this show, they had no frame of reference.
I've always had the greatest respect for you as a director. It's only as a person I despise you. I'm sure someday when you're a star, you'll also have a double to do things you find difficult, like acting or...
They were right to cancel it. Hurt? Oh, it hurt a lot, but they were right.
By the late 1970s, Betty White's career was at a crossroads. The Mary Tyler Moore Show had been a huge hit. The Betty White Show, a painful disappointment. Unsure of her next project, the 56-year-old found safe haven on variety programs like The Carol Burnett Show. Betty had been friends with both Carol Burnett and Vicki Lawrence since the early days of Password.
I remember Betty always says, we get to play together next week. We get to play.
Betty and Alan Ludden also continued to enjoy one of Hollywood's strongest marriages.
Then, of course, there's Betty White.
You wanted me to tell you how I got on the show?
How did you get on the show, Betty?
Just
Boy, if
lucky,
you do that
The couple celebrated the arrival of the 1980s with the completion of a new vacation home in Carmel, California.
When he was trying to sell me on getting married, he said, I'll build you a house in Carmel. And that was sort of a running gag. Well, sure enough, years later, we found this wonderful lot and built the house. And we were halfway through building it when we discovered he wasn't going to make it.
In January 1981, after several periods of unexplained fever, Alan Ludden was diagnosed as having cancer of the stomach. The condition was terminal, and progressing quickly. Betty and her husband told no one except their closest friends. Alan wanted his final days to be as happy as possible, so the couple returned to their seaside home.
He slept there 2 nights, so it put a closure on there.
In 1981, Alan Ludden died at age 63, just 5 days before their 18th wedding anniversary. After his funeral, many in Hollywood gathered to remember and celebrate the life of their friend.
Who was it, Schopenhauer, who said, "Rejoice not for long that he's gone, but celebrate forever that he was." And that was sort of the spirit of what the thing was. And people came in that you never expected to see and to be there. And it was literally a celebration.
Things like that happen to people in life. You know, you lose loved ones, but either you choose to go on and have a new day and a new life, or you let it get the best of you. And she's a survivor.
As her 60th birthday approached, Betty White refused to give up living, and in the months that followed, she turned to work to keep up her spirit. Besides television, White authored a book on pets, and she increased her work with animal charities. She also returned to sitcoms. Mama's Family reunited Betty with her Carol Burnett show friends Harvey Korman and Vicki Lawrence, who always appreciated White's salty sense of humor.
She has got the bawdiest, raunchiest sense of humor in life, and somehow Betty gets away with it because it comes out of that sweet face with that giant dimple, and you can't believe what you're hearing.
When Mama's Family ended after 2 seasons in 1985, some speculated that 63-year-old Betty had reached the twilight of her career. But in fact, a golden age was about to begin. That same year, Betty was cast in a pilot for a TV sitcom that seemed at first to have limited potential. It centered on 4 senior citizens, and it was called The Golden Girls.
You look at it now and you think, well, hey, no-brainer, but you got to think a show about 4 old retired widowed women in Florida sitting around a pastel house eating cheesecake in the kitchen. I mean, like, what kind of a show is that?
NBC hedged its bets with a dream team cast that included Broadway actress Estelle Getty, former Maude star Beatrice Arthur, and Rue McClanahan, who co-starred with Betty on Mama's Family. Ironically, White was originally slated to play man-hungry Blanche Devereaux, the role that went to McClanahan.
Because she was Sue Ann Nivens, they thought of her for Blanche. And because I had been Vivian in Maude, empty-headed, blank-eyed Vivian, they thought of me for Rose. So after I read for Jay Sandrich, the director, he asked if I would read the other part for him. So I did. And the next thing I know, they'd called Betty and me in together. And to her great amazement, I don't think anyone had told her this, they asked her to read Rose and me to read Blanche, and she was, quite taken aback.
No, I can't do this.
She was initially unhappy about it, I think, and also a bit scared because Rose, of the 4 characters, is possibly the trickiest one to play because, you know, she doesn't have a defined personality because she's vague.
And then I got into my car and caught a glimpse of myself, and I almost had a heart attack. This old woman was in the mirror. I didn't even recognize her.
Who was it?
It was me.
I knew who Blanche was, but I wasn't sure who Rose was. Rose was sort of an amorphous character. And it was Jay, bless his heart, who said, "Betty, she is not dumb. She is so innocent. She's totally naive. She's terminally naive."
It is so clear. It looks like you could just reach up and touch those stars.
I can't tell you how many people in St. Olaf have fallen off their roofs trying. She just hears the first meaning of a word. So that made sense for me.
Charlie and I waited 2 whole years before we got married.
I got married before my father finished the sentence.
You married your father?
In September of 1985, The Golden Girls premiered on NBC. Reviews were positive, and ratings were through the roof.
This
This is incredible news. I've been nominated for St. Olaf Woman of the Year.
Well, that's nice. Did the new TV guide come yet?
Last year, Gretchen Lillehammer won for running into the burning library and saving all the books.
That is amazing. How'd she do that?
Well, she took 2 books in one hand and one in the other and ran like the Dickens.
It was a complete sensation, and the industry embrace for these actresses getting this role at a time when women of their age couldn't get work anywhere. The Golden Girls flies in the face of conventional Hollywood wisdom that these women can only play grandmas on a Hallmark Hall of Fame or something. And here, they're sometimes cursing up a streak. They're basically acting up a streak on this show. They're having a ball.
If you ask me, Blanche, your Uncle Lucas is nothing but lonely.
Right.
Hey, Dorothy, you two might just hit it off.
We sort of felt we had something kind of special. We hit the floor running, and what an opportunity. We were never out of the top 10.
In 1986, Betty became the first of the show's stars to win an Emmy for Best Actress in a Comedy Series.
We want to thank the network for taking a chance on 4 old ladies.
In the course of the series' run, she would be nominated every season.
You know, it doesn't matter whether I win. I mean, just being nominated is enough.
That's a good attitude, Rose.
It's also a crock of bull. I want that sucker bad.
The Golden Girls more than lived up to its name, giving NBC one of its biggest hits in the 1980s. It also brought Betty White steady employment for the next 6 years. But as the show finished its 7th season in 1992, Beatrice Arthur decided it was time to move on, and the Golden Girls came to an end.
Dorothy, is this goodbye?
I love you. Always.
A spin-off show, The Golden Palace, continued the story of Rose, Blanche, and Sophia for another season. For the rest of the 1990s, Betty worked steadily, joining the cast of Bob Newhart's sitcom Bob and appearing in TV movies and specials. But besides acting, there was another driving passion in Betty's life: the welfare of animals.
We Golden Girls are healthy. We take our pills, we do our exercises. But what about our animals? Oh, yeah, we have to think of their health, too.
White remained one of Hollywood's best-known and most respected champions of animal rights.
Our slogan is a better tomorrow for animals.
In 1997, the actress passed on the part of Helen Hunt's mother in As Good as It Gets because she objected to the treatment of a dog in the story. Over the years, she personally adopted dozens of injured and abandoned pets. She supported the creation of new animal medicines and vaccines. And in 1978, Betty received an award for special service by the American Humane Society.
Anything you can name that has to do with animals and their deserved improvement in treatment, Betty is a leader in that movement.
Since 1970, Betty has been a trustee of the Los Angeles Zoo and was appointed to the LA Zoo Commission by former Mayor Richard Riordan.
She is a wonderful supporter of the zoo, both financially, but even more importantly, just she continues to give of herself.
Not so bad. Not too shabby.
Betty is very good friends with many zoo directors throughout the United States.
We always look forward to her Christmas card because it's always got the beautiful guide dogs on it, and that's her gift, is a guide dog for a blind person. I think animals just know when they're around her, and you don't go to her house that you don't leave with pet DNA under your fingernails. Either that or you're not a Betty White person.
In 2002, Betty White celebrated a milestone, her 80th birthday. But after 50 years in television, the energetic octogenarian showed no sign of slowing down.
Where does it happen where for a long time you don't like people to know how old you are and all that, and then you pass a point, and after that you begin to brag about how old you are? I don't know where that breaking point is, but I'm way past that.
But even as an octogenarian, Betty could still surprise her fans.
Just be quiet. Wait just a second, my shoes. Mr. Sanderson, is everything okay? I
I thought I heard Negro.
No? No Negro spoken here.
In 2003, Betty brought her comic edge to the big screen, playing against her image by portraying a sweet, smiling bigot in the #1 box office hit, Bringing Down the House, starring Steve Martin and Queen Latifah.
My character says terrible, racist, awful things, but she doesn't know she's saying them. But that was fun to play, to make fun of people who really think and talk like that and make them look ridiculous. I enjoyed that.
Mr. Sanderson, those Latin people who were skulking around,
Oh, they were looking at the Aruda house.
casing it?
No, to buy it.
Please, if they're in this block and not carrying a leaf blower,
Yeah, well, I'd love to discuss this with you further, but I'm expecting someone.
I didn't have a big part in the picture at all. It's a small part, but they made you feel so comfortable, like you were in the gang. It was just delightful.
Over the next year, Betty hit the TV show circuit, making guest appearances on everything from Malcolm in the Middle to My Wife and Kids and The Practice. And in 2005, the role Betty established on The Practice, the scheming, cold-hearted Catherine Piper, became a recurring role on Boston Legal. Betty then made a move that seemed a bit unorthodox for an actress of her stature. She joined the soap opera The Bold and the Beautiful. Betty remained a series regular until 2009, appearing in 23 episodes. As Betty's renewed television career was gaining momentum, the big screen came calling again. This time, Betty starred as the pushy yet lovable grandma in The Proposal with Ryan Reynolds and Sandra Bullock. In one unforgettable scene, Betty had to touch Sandra's breasts. While most actresses might have been uncomfortable, Sandra praised Betty's technique.
Betty has to have been, I have to say, hands down, the best second base lover I've ever had. Firm yet tender, she caressed, she spent time there. You know, most of you guys just want to get down to your business. You know, Betty knew what a woman wanted, stayed there, and just made sure I got what I needed.
By 2010, the 88-year-old actress was surprisingly in high demand.
I think the most surprised person on this planet is my agent. They still are using it, but it's beyond belief exciting.
And the excitement continued. Buddy Sandra Bullock presented Betty with a Screen Actors Guild Award for Lifetime Achievement.
They told me about the SAG Lifetime Achievement Award, and I thought they were putting me on. I really did. I thought that was for sure.
Usually this type of award is given to actors a bit past their prime, but with Betty, that was the farthest thing from the truth.
She looks incredible. Look at this sexy body. Are you kidding me right now? Of course.
Sex is my middle name.
It seemed everyone was jumping on the Betty White bandwagon. Even Snickers recruited her for what turned out to be 2010's most memorable Super Bowl ad. In an industry known for ageism, Betty White was redefining the Hollywood standard. And little did she know, she was about to achieve pop icon status.
A young man put on his Facebook that he thought it'd be a nice idea if Betty White hosted Saturday Night Live.
The Facebook campaign was called Betty White to host SNL, please. The group was approaching 500,000 when NBC confirmed that White agreed to host SNL.
I asked her in the 70s, I asked her in the 80s, I asked her in the 90s, and she turned 88 and said yes.
Her appearance would make her the oldest person to host the late-night institution. Even after more than 60 years of television experience, Betty was surprisingly uneasy about doing live TV.
I've got to tell you, I am scared to death.
On May 8, 2010, Betty faced her fears and hosted SNL.
She's really something else, and as fans of hers, she's everything we hoped she'd be.
Not only was the episode SNL's highest-rated show since November of '08, it earned Betty her 7th Emmy. Despite her age, Betty was officially one of Hollywood's most sought-after actresses. And TV Land was the first in line. The network got Betty to appear in the premiere episode of their new original series, Hot in Cleveland. That show did so well that TV Land signed her on as a series regular. For Valerie Bertinelli, Jane Leeves, and Wendy Malick, working with a living legend is a constant source of inspiration.
You have made me own my age. If you're in your 40s, your 50s, your 80s, you still have so much ahead of you.
You're never done. I have no problem admitting my age now.
As Betty made friends with her new co-stars, she found herself having to say goodbye to an old one. On June 3rd, Betty's dear friend Rue McClanahan passed away. Rue's death, B. Arthur's passing in 2009, and Estelle Getty's death in 2008 made Betty the only surviving Golden Girl. In September, Betty went on to play Grandma Bunny in another female ensemble, You Again. Co-stars Kristen Bell and Jamie Lee Curtis were thrilled to get their turn to work with the beloved actress.
I sat there with my jaw dropped every day I worked with her.
It wasn't exactly Betty's presence that made Kristen Bell's jaw drop.
She drops in a random conversation the word pecker, and I almost fell out of my chair. And I thought my life was complete. I heard Betty White say the word pecker.
Betty might be known for her occasional lewd sense of humor, but when it comes to the welfare of animals, she's nothing but serious. And when she was made an honorary forest ranger by the USDA Forest Service, along with Smokey the Bear, a lifelong dream was fulfilled. As if that wasn't enough, Betty was chosen as AP's Entertainer of the Year, was inducted into the California Hall of Fame, and closed out the year as one of Barbara Walters' 10 most fascinating people.
This year has been a startler for me. It's wonderful, and I'm terribly grateful for the honors that I've received.
On January 17, 2011, Betty White celebrated her 89th birthday in New York City with her Hot in Cleveland cast. Her wish?
I'm looking forward to working with these wonderful gals and having the fun that we've had so far continue.
Looks like Betty's birthday wish came true. Hot in Cleveland, in its second season, won Betty Best Outstanding Performance in a Comedy Series at the 2011 SAG Awards. Later that year, Hot in Cleveland was picked up for a third season. Then the 89-year-old actress signed on to host and executive produce a hidden camera comedy series for NBC. Off Their Rockers, based on the Belgian hit Benidorm Bastards, follows a group of saucy senior citizens as they play pranks on unsuspecting young people. Betty is unstoppable. In addition to the two series, her book, If You Ask Me, was released in May.
She should be declared a national treasure. Because think about it, in the 50s when I came out here she was. Life with Elizabeth. And here we are, she's still on the boards. And she's still as great as ever.
Actress, author, animal lover, game player. Betty White has poured her heart into everything she's tackled. And no matter how acerbic her image has been on screen, audiences have always embraced the compassionate lady behind the punchline.
Where's the third camera?
She wasn't afraid of the television camera. She just said, look, this is who I am, this is what I think is funny, and that was the person who was on the television screen. And people just loved that.
Do they? Oh, they do.
You know, Betty, I think, is the best thing that has happened to American women in years and years and years. She has just reinvented what it is to age with grace and humor and beauty.
And Betty has no interest in quitting the industry that has been her home for over 60 years.
Well, when something's this much fun, why do you stop? As long as they keep asking, I'll keep saying yes. That is show business.
There's one thing we want you to remember, too. As Moosey Moosefield was telling us, there's one thing you never want to do, Elizabeth, he said. You never want to lose your sense of humor.